All right, Sheriff Mack, this is a short segment, but you've got the floor. Let's break down your metamorphosis, your awakening to the 10th Amendment, and that leading you now to be one of the main leaders really carrying the torch of freedom and having people rediscover the power of the state, and particularly the sheriff, another key battlefront that we're on.
Yeah, it is that, and like I say, it's I think it's our only hope left. Now, I'm reading from a little pocket-sized brief of the case, and if anybody would like to get that, it's called The Victory for State Sovereignty, the Mack Prince versus USA case, and it's available at my website, and it's sheriffmack.com. You can also get the book, The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope, which everyone should have a copy of both of these. This little booklet that I have in my hand that I'm reviewing with you right now regarding this case, the most powerful and monumental 10th Amendment decision in the history of our country. This was all about states' rights. It talks about the EPA being unconstitutional. It talks about the states not being puppets of the ventriloquist Congress. It talks about the Supremacy Clause, and that is a key component of this whole thing, because Barack Obama is saying he wants to sue Arizona on the Supremacy Clause. Well, Justice Scalia already says that the Supremacy Clause does not give the federal government supremacy. It says that the Constitution is supreme, not the federal government, and that's a huge difference. And one of the key components of this case is that the decision is based on this, and Scalia, who wrote the decision, says this over and over in the decision, and I quote, "State legislatures are not subject to federal direction," end quote. So if we are not subject to federal direction, and if we indeed, as this case says, if the states are indeed sovereign, then that means that the federal government is not our boss. They cannot tell us what to do. They cannot issue directives to the states. They cannot control our land, our water, our education, our health care, or anything else that they're trying to shove down our throats. So where do we go to make sure that we know and understand this? The same place I went. Now, Alex, you mentioned I was a rookie cop in Provo, Utah. When I was there, I made a huge mistake. I actually read the Constitution. I took my oath of office after that very seriously. I made a commitment to myself that I would never go against the Constitution, that I would uphold and defend the Constitution just like I promised to do. And if we wake up local officials to that principle, that they'll keep their word when they swear an oath that is required by Article 6 of our own Constitution, that the Founding Fathers put in there, that all state and local officials would be required to swear allegiance not to the king, not to the president, not to some bureaucracy, not to the governor, but to the people, that we promised that we would uphold and defend their constitutional rights. And if we had everybody in local government doing just that, if every sheriff, in fact, if we only had 300 or 400 or 500 of the 3,000 sheriffs in this country actually keeping their oath and defending the Constitution against all enemies, both foreign and domestic, if we actually had that, Alex, we would get our freedom back tomorrow.
Oh, it would paralyze the New World Order, and that's why they're demonizing you. That's why they're so scared, and that's why everybody's got to go to your website and get your book and give it to their sheriff. Again, give people the website or a number so they can get your book and get it in the hands of sheriffs. This is like a stake through the heart of vampires, every sheriff that we wake up.
Well, that is sheriffmack.com. Sheriff, 1 R, 2 Fs, and Mack, M-A-C-K. Just go to sheriffmack.com. And the book actually needs to get to county commissioners and county attorneys. Most of the sheriffs in the country have the book. However, you need to follow up and make sure they read it. Just as you said, no one can guarantee they read it. We also have it on CD, so if somebody doesn't want to read, they can listen to it. And it is me reading the book. And then you can get these little booklets, and every state legislator, every county commissioner, every state and local official should see this little booklet, The Victory for State Sovereignty, because it reviews what we've been talking about here on the show, and it's in pocket-sized form, and in 10 minutes, your state rep or your local county commissioner or your local sheriff can see what this case actually did to restore sovereignty in this.
Okay, we're going to talk
country.
about your plan and versus what the feds are doing, the alternative here in a moment. But I want to, since you are a sheriff from the West, I want to, draw this analogy here and then get involved with what's happening on the Arizona border right now and this act of treason by Obama. But going back, we've all seen Westerns.
Well, Alex, let me just reiterate something that you said. This is about solutions. This isn't just talking about things that are horrible and going on in our country. We could do that till next year and still not finish. This is about a solution that is reasonable, effective, quick, and doable and constitutional.
And it's the law.
Something we should already,
it's the law. And we're going to get into that in a moment, but I want to just give people so they have a mental image of what's happened so they can have respect for themselves again.
Okay.
We've all seen those Westerns and Matt Dillon and John Wayne, and I always thought growing up as a kid, those are just movies where there's a corrupt town with bad guys in it, robbing and raping and, oppressing and taking farmers' water and taking their daughters, and finally people stand up. Or I thought it was a Louis L'Amour novel. Now I've read a lot of histories of the West and things that happened in this country, and even after World War II in a Tennessee town when the vets came home and there was a corrupt government and they had to run them out. But this is what happened in 1776. It's what Andrew Jackson fought against. It's always a repeat of the scallywags, the carpetbaggers, the corrupt interests that come in, the Rockefeller men sending Pinkerton security, like in that Clint Eastwood movie where the mining town and the railroad men come and are killing people to take their claims. That's a composite of thousands of true events, but more often than not, people stood up because they were armed and fought back. And, the issue here is what's happening with the feds, what's happening in our society. We see that Hollywood image of the town finally standing up. That's what America is. That's what our counties are. That's what our societies are. And people, you've just got to get angry. You got to start talking. You got to turn the television set off. You got to get to the commissioner's court. You got to get with others. You got to get angry. And you got to get the facts and the Constitution. Because I'm going to say it again, it is like a stake through the heart of these vampires because our country was born in the fight for liberty. We've been through this over and over again. We're not the first people to go through this, and we've got the blueprint of how to beat these people.
We do, and it's every bit constitutional. It's every bit lawful, and it is a peaceful process. This will not hurt anyone except the traitors in Washington, D.C. There is no answer in Washington, D.C. It is the most corrupt place on the face of the planet, but we can make headway in our counties, and we can take America back county by county and state by state. But it's got to start with you, every one of your listeners. You've got to know and understand the principle of state sovereignty. Your sheriff has got to know and understand the principle of state sovereignty and local autonomy, and that's exactly what my lawsuit was about. Now, Judge John Roll said, and that's also quoted in my little booklet that I have here in my hand, The Victory for State Sovereignty, he said, Mack is thus forced to choose between keeping his oath or obeying the act, subjecting himself to possible sanctions. Well, my question is to every peace officer and sheriff in this country, when you are forced by the federal government and the lawmakers around you to choose between your oath or following laws and statutes, which one are you going to do? Are you going to side with the people and freedom, or are you going to continue to acquiesce and follow the...
Well, the founders had us swear to this oath because they wanted to point out this is the real law. This is the power. This is the America.
Exactly.
This is the republic. Not what some flim-flammer comes along later with them. And that's what Thomas Jefferson, George Washington said over and over again. You got to stick to this, not what lawyers come and invent later or what they try to twist out of it.
That's exactly correct. And this is all foundational. It's all fundamental. And the first page of my book, I'm glad you talked about Thomas Jefferson, because I quote him on the very first page of my book. And he says, when all government shall be drawn to Washington as the center of all power, it will render powerless the checks provided and become as venal and oppressive as the government from which we separated. The question is, Alex, to whom can your people turn? The people in Austin, Texas, or the people in southern Arizona, or the people throughout this country, who can they turn to for peace, safety, and protection when government from Washington, D.C. has become venal and oppressive? And the answer is your county sheriff and your local officials.